Part 8, Chapter 2 of Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, translated by Nathan Haskell Dole. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Read by Mary Ann Spiegel. Sergey Ivanovitch and Katavasov had just reached the station of the Kursk railway, which was especially crowded that day, and, leaving their carriage, they were looking at a lackey who had followed them laden with various articles, when 4 cabs filled with volunteers also drove up. Ladies carrying bouquets met them, and accompanied by a crowd, they entered the station. One of the ladies who had come to meet the volunteers came out of the waiting room and addressed Sergey Ivanovitch. "Did you also come to see them off?" she asked, speaking in French. "No, I am going myself, Princess, to have a little rest at my brother's. But are you still on escort duty?" he added, with a scarcely perceptible smile of amusement. "I have to be," replied the princess. "But tell me, is it true that we have sent off 800 already? Malvinsky told me so." "More than 800. We've sent off more than 1,000, if we could count those not immediately from Moscow," said Sergey Ivanovitch. "There, I said so!" cried the lady, delighted. "And is it true that the subscriptions amount to nearly 1 million?" "More than that, Princess." "Have you read the news? They have beaten the Turks again." "Yes, I read about it," replied Sergey Ivanovitch. She referred to a recent dispatch, which confirmed the report that 3 days before the Turks had been beaten at every point and had fled, and that the next day a decisive battle was expected. "Oh, by the way, do you know a splendid young fellow is petitioning to go? I don't see why they put obstacles in his way. I wanted to ask you to put your signature on his petition. I know him. He comes from the Countess Lidia Ivanovna." After asking some particulars in regard to the young man, Sergey Ivanovitch went into the waiting room, affixed his signature to the document, and handed it back to the princess. "Do you know, Count Vronsky, the famous, is going on this train?" said the princess, with a triumphant and significant smile, as he rejoined her and handed her the petition. "I heard that he was going, but I did not know when. On this train?" "I just saw him. He is here. His mother is the only one with him. All things considered, I do not think he could do any better." "Oh, yes, of course." During the conversation the crowd had rushed into the restaurant of the station, where a man with a glass in his hand was making an address to the volunteers. "For the service of our faith and humanity and our brethren," he said, raising his voice, "Matushka Moskva, Mother Moscow, gives you her blessing in this noble cause. May it prosper," he concluded, with tears in his eyes. The crowd responded with cheers, and a fresh throng poured into the waiting room, nearly overwhelming the princess. "Ah, princess, what do you say to this?" cried Stepan Arkadyevitch, who, with a radiant smile of joy, suddenly appeared in the midst of the throng. "Didn't he speak gloriously? Bravo! And here's Sergey Ivanovitch. You ought to speak just a few words, you know, of encouragement. You do it so well," added Oblonsky, touching Koznishev's arm with an expression of suave, flattering deference. "Oh, no, I am leaving immediately." "Where?" "To the country, to my brother's," replied Sergey Ivanovitch. "Then you'll see my wife. I've written her, but you'll see her before she gets my letter. Please tell her that you met me, and that everything is all right. She will understand. And be so good as to tell her, too, that I got my place as a member of the commission of... Well, she knows what that is. You know, les petites misères de la vie humaine," said he, turning to the princess, as if in apology. "My Kaya, not Lisa, but Bipshy, sends 1,000 guns and 12 hospital nurses. Did I tell you?" "Yes, I heard about it," answered Koznishev coldly. "But what a pity you are going away," replied Stepan Arkadyevitch. "We give a farewell dinner tomorrow to 2 volunteers, at Dimer's. Bartnietsky of Petersburg and our Veslovsky, Grisha. Both are going. Veslovsky is just married. He is a fine lad. Isn't it so, princess?" he added, addressing the lady. The princess did not reply, but looked at Koznishev. The fact that the princess and Sergey Ivanovitch evidently wanted to get rid of him did not in the least disconcert Stepan Arkadyevitch. Smiling, he glanced now at the princess's hat plume, now off to one side or the other, as if searching for a new subject, and, As he saw a lady going by with a subscription box, he beckoned to her and handed her a 5-ruble note. "I can't bear to see the subscription boxes pass by me, now that I have ready money," he said. "What splendid news there is! Hurrah for the Montenegrins!" "What is that you say?" he cried, when the princess told him that Vronsky was going by the first train. For an instant Stepan Arkadyevitch's face grew sad, but the next moment, slightly limping with both feet, and stroking his side whiskers, he went off to the room where Vronsky was. He had already entirely forgotten the tears he had shed over his sister's grave, and saw in Vronsky only a hero and an old friend. "One must do him justice, in spite of his faults," said the princess to Sergey Ivanovitch, when Oblonsky was gone. "He has the true Russian, the Slavic nature. But I am afraid it will be disagreeable to the count to see him. Whatever people may say, I pity that unhappy man. Try to talk with him a little on the journey," said the princess. "Certainly, if I have a chance." "I never liked him, but what he is doing now makes up for much. He's not only going himself, but he's taking out a squadron of cavalry at his own expense." "Yes, so I have heard." The bell rang, and the crowd pressed toward the doors. "There he is," said the princess, pointing out Vronsky, who was dressed in a long coat and broad-brimmed black hat. His mother was leaning on his arm. Oblonsky followed them, talking vivaciously. Vronsky was frowning and looked straight ahead, as if not listening to what Stepan Arkadyevitch said. Apparently at Oblonsky's suggestion he looked in the direction where Sergey Ivanovitch and the princess were standing, and raised his hat silently. His face, which had grown old and worn, was like stone. Going out on the platform, Vronsky, silently quitting his mother's side, vanished from sight in his compartment. On the platform men were singing the national hymn. Then hurrahs and vivas resounded. One of the volunteers, a tall, very young man, with stooping shoulders, ostentatiously responded to the public, waving above his head a felt hat and a bouquet, while behind him 2 officers and an elderly man with a full beard and a greasy cap put out their heads, also bowing. End of chapter 2.